Subtlety is often overlooked in a world that celebrates loud victories, dramatic gestures, and visible results. We live in a culture that praises speed, exposure, and constant motion. Yet the quiet force of subtlety works beneath the surface, guiding transformation in ways that are often invisible to the impatient eye. The power of subtlety is not the absence of strength, but rather the refinement of it, the distillation of raw energy into precision. Much like how a single drop of ink can spread across water with more influence than a bucket poured all at once. Subtlety is the breath you barely notice, but that sustains your life. It is the shift in posture that changes the flow of energy in your body. It is the glance that carries more meaning than a speech. To cultivate subtlety is to recognize that not all power needs to announce itself. Often the greatest strength lies in restraint, in the ability to direct force with careful attention rather than wasting it through impulsive reaction. The martial traditions understood this deeply. A master does not always strike with maximum force. Instead, the master understands angles, timing, and the smallest adjustments that redirect the largest threats. Subtlety is this hidden mastery, the art of making movements so refined they appear effortless, yet they carry the weight of profound training and discipline. It is the opposite of clumsiness or exaggeration. It is grace sharpened by awareness. When we practice subtlety, we become more attentive to the invisible layers of life. Consider communication. Words are obvious, but the pauses between them, the tone in which they are spoken, and the silence that frames them often hold more meaning than the words themselves. A subtle mind listens to what is unsaid. A subtle heart perceives what is not revealed on the surface. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is heightened perception, the sharpening of one's inner instrument to pick up on the frequencies others may ignore. In the practice of self-cultivation, subtlety is the slow shift in thought patterns, the gradual loosening of unnecessary attachments, the invisible refining of habits that eventually reshape a person's life. Great changes do not always arrive with an explosion. Sometimes they move like water carving stone, silently yet persistently. Subtlety teaches us patience, for it reveals that the most lasting transformations occur beneath the surface, almost imperceptible until one day the entire form has changed. Subtlety is also found in nature. Watch the way a flower unfolds. It does not shout. It does not rush. It opens gently, moment by moment, almost unnoticeable to the hurried eye. Yet in its quiet growth lies a strength more profound than noise. The subtle way the wind bends a tree without breaking it demonstrates resilience that brute force could never achieve. The way light fills a room not through command, but through quiet presence shows how subtle energy transforms space without effort. In relationships, subtlety is the ability to sense the needs of another without demanding recognition. It is the gentle act of adjusting one's behavior to create harmony without losing authenticity. It is the silent support given when words would only complicate. Subtle power does not need to be displayed, for it acts directly on the level of connection, shaping outcomes without spectacle. In the inner journey, subtlety becomes even more essential. The subtleties of breath reveal the state of the mind. The subtle shift of focus during meditation determines whether restlessness takes over or stillness deepens. The subtle patterns of thought, often too quiet to notice, form the foundation of our entire perspective. By training awareness to detect these small movements, we gain the ability to transform the roots of our being rather than only trimming the branches. The practice of subtlety requires discipline because the world encourages us to look for obvious signs of progress. Yet the most meaningful progress is rarely visible at first glance. Subtle strength grows in the unseen hours of practice, in the small choices made daily, in the restraint shown when ego demands attention. To appreciate subtlety is to free oneself from the need for constant validation and to trust the quiet process of refinement. Subtlety is not passivity. It is not the absence of action. Rather, it is action so precise, so intentional, that it does not waste energy. Like the artist who uses a single stroke to express an entire landscape, or the monk who sits silently yet radiates presence that fills the room, subtlety is efficiency born from awareness. It is strength measured not by noise but by depth. When we learn to embrace subtlety, we begin to understand that true transformation does not always come with grand announcements. It often comes in whispers, in gentle realignments, in quiet persistence. Subtlety is the strength of the river carving through the mountain, the softness of silence that speaks louder than words, the invisible thread that holds together the fabric of life. It is the unshakable confidence that power does not need to prove itself, because its influence is already woven into the smallest of moments. Restraint is one of those qualities that many misunderstand. To most, it looks like withholding, suppressing, or restricting oneself. It seems like a kind of weakness, like a failure to express or to act. But the truth is the opposite. Restraint is not the absence of strength, it is the very evidence of it. To restrain oneself in a world that constantly tempts, provokes, and pulls at your emotions requires more energy than reacting impulsively. Anyone can be loud, anyone can rush forward, anyone can speak without thought. But the mystery lies in the one who has mastered stillness when noise is easy, silence when words are tempting, and patience when immediate action seems unavoidable. Restraint is the recognition that not every impulse deserves to be followed. The mind is full of reactions, anger, fear, desire, pride, and each of these pushes us toward movement. The untrained person follows them, believing they are free because they act as they feel. But this so-called freedom is actually slavery, because if every passing emotion dictates your behavior, you are nothing more than a puppet of your inner storms. True freedom arises when you see these storms rising and you choose not to be swept away. Restraint, therefore, is not suppression. It is clarity. It is standing before the flood and deciding not to drown in it. The mystery deepens when you see how restraint shifts the quality of your presence. Think of a sword. A blade that is always swinging loses its sharpness quickly, but the blade kept in its sheath, polished and protected, retains its edge for when it is truly needed. Restraint works in the same way. By not dispersing your energy into every passing situation, you preserve it, concentrate it, and store it deep within yourself. The person who always reacts, always speaks, always expends energy has very little left when a true challenge arrives. The restrained one, however, carries an unseen power, a reserve that can be directed with precision when the right moment comes. In daily life, restraint shows itself in subtle ways. It is in the pause before replying to a harsh word. It is in the decision to walk away rather than escalate. It is in choosing not to explain yourself when silence will do more. It is the discipline of refusing to indulge in every desire simply because it appears. And though others may see this as weakness, as passivity, it is in fact the deeper strength. Because to resist what is easy, what is immediately satisfying, is to prove that you are not controlled by the world, but instead have command over yourself. Another layer of the mystery is how restraint connects to patience. The impatient person believes that life must deliver everything now, that every answer must come immediately, that every door must open as soon as it is knocked upon. But restraint allows patience to take root, and patience itself becomes wisdom. The tree does not force its fruit before its time. The river does not rush to the ocean in one day. Nature itself shows us the way of restraint, the way of timing, the way of waiting, the way of unfolding. Those who learn to embody this rhythm begin to understand life not as a series of immediate gratifications, but as a process of cultivation. Restraint is also the guardian of dignity. When a person loses restraint, they often act in ways they later regret. Words spoken in anger cannot be unsaid. Actions taken in haste cannot be undone. But the one who practices restraint shields themselves from these consequences. They maintain their dignity not by avoiding conflict, but by refusing to let conflict decide who they are. The restrained individual chooses their responses with care, ensuring that nothing they do later diminishes the self they are building. In this way, restraint is not only a momentary decision, it is a lifelong protection. There is also a spiritual aspect to restraint. Every tradition speaks of it, though in different terms. In meditation, restraint is the refusal to chase every thought. In discipline, it is the refusal to follow every craving. In wisdom, it is the refusal to believe every impulse of the mind. By practicing restraint, one begins to notice a deeper current beneath the surface noise of life. When you do not rush to satisfy every desire, you begin to realize that desire itself is endless. And in this realization, you touch upon something greater than satisfaction. You touch upon freedom from needing to be satisfied at every moment. The mystery grows when you realize that restraint does not reduce life but expands it. To someone who has never practiced it, restraint feels like limitation. But in truth, it creates space. When you stop filling every silence with words, you discover what silence itself has to teach you. When you stop reacting to every provocation, you begin to experience the power of peace. When you stop indulging in every craving, you discover how little you actually need. Restraint is not the narrowing of life, but the opening of its deeper dimensions. And yet, restraint cannot be confused with fear or avoidance. To hold back out of fear is not restraint, it is cowardice. True restraint comes from strength, from the capacity to act, but the wisdom to know when not to. A restrained warrior is not one who refuses to fight, but one who fights only when the fight is necessary. A restrained speaker is not one who cannot speak, but one who chooses silence until the right word carries weight. The mystery is that restraint makes action more powerful, not less, because it ensures that action is rare, intentional, and aligned. Restraint is the art of conserving energy. Imagine water flowing through a dam. Without the dam, water rushes everywhere uncontrolled, losing its potential. With the dam, water is held, concentrated, and then released with power. Restraint is that dam within the human spirit. It allows energy to collect, to deepen, and to transform into something greater than scattered fragments of impulse. When such energy is finally released, it carries force, clarity, and precision that unfocused expression could never achieve. In the rhythm of life, people often feel the pressure to present themselves in ways that are not truly aligned with who they are. From early on, there is a subtle conditioning that teaches one to adjust, to conform, to bend themselves into the shape that society expects. The applause of others becomes a currency, and in the pursuit of validation, individuals begin to trade authenticity for performance. It may appear successful on the surface, but beneath the polished acts, a quiet unease lingers, because the true self is hidden, waiting for expression. Performance thrives on the perception of others. It demands that one carefully calculates every step, every word, every action, so that it matches what the external world finds acceptable or admirable. Authenticity, on the other hand, asks for courage. It is raw, unpolished, sometimes misunderstood, but always real. The difference is that performance is fragile. It requires constant upkeep, constant effort to maintain the image. Authenticity, once embraced, is self-sustaining because it does not rely on anything external to exist. When a person chooses performance over authenticity, they often find themselves exhausted. There is the endless cycle of rehearsing identities, of wearing masks, of making sure the act remains convincing. It drains energy because to perform means to hold back parts of oneself, to suppress what naturally arises, and to constantly monitor how one is perceived. The human spirit is not designed to thrive under constant surveillance of the self. The more a person performs, the further they drift from the center of who they truly are. Authenticity is not effortless, but it is liberating. It does not mean a person exposes everything about themselves to the world. Rather, it means that what they do share is aligned with what they truly feel and believe. It is the art of being consistent inwardly and outwardly, without the need for exaggeration or pretense. To live authentically is to step into a rhythm that does not depend on applause, approval, or external reward. It is to act from a space of integrity, even if that means fewer people clap. The roots of performance often lie in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, fear of being misunderstood. These fears are powerful forces that push individuals to mold themselves into what they think others will accept. But the paradox is that performance never guarantees acceptance. It only attracts those who resonate with the image, not with the truth. Authenticity, though it may repel some, always draws the right connections. Those who align with the real self are the ones who matter, because their connection is not to the mask, but to the essence. In stillness, it becomes clear how heavy performance feels. One can sense the tension in the body, the mind constantly anticipating reactions, the heart quietly longing for freedom. To step into authenticity is to release that weight. It is to stop seeking approval and to start living from the simple knowing that being real is enough. This shift is subtle but profound. It transforms the way one speaks, the way one listens, the way one engages with the world. Authenticity is not about rebellion for the sake of standing out, nor is it about disregarding the world. It is about aligning with the inner truth and letting that truth guide action. A person who is authentic moves differently. There is a steadiness in their presence, a calm in their words, and a quiet strength that does not need to prove itself. Such presence cannot be faked, because it is rooted in alignment, not performance. The struggle many face is that performance offers quick rewards, while authenticity requires patience. A mask can quickly earn attention, admiration, or even success, but it cannot sustain fulfillment because the soul knows it is playing a role. Authenticity may take longer to be recognized, but when it is, the recognition feels whole because it affirms what is true, not what is staged. This is why living authentically often feels slower at first, yet its impact is deeper and longer lasting. Authenticity also demands vulnerability. It requires a person to admit they are not perfect, to accept that they will make mistakes, and to embrace the fact that not everyone will understand them. This is difficult because the mind craves security and performance seems to provide it. Yet, the more one accepts their own imperfections and shares themselves as they are, the stronger they become. Vulnerability transforms into strength when authenticity becomes the guiding principle. When people live in performance mode, their lives are fragmented. There is one version of themselves in public, another in private, and perhaps yet another hidden even from themselves. But when authenticity takes precedence, life becomes whole, the separation dissolves, and the individual begins to live as one complete being, not a collection of roles. This integration creates harmony because there is no longer the stress of pretending. The journey from performance to authenticity is not a single leap, but a gradual shedding of layers. It is the practice of noticing where one is acting out of fear and choosing instead to act from truth. It is the recognition that applause fades quickly, but inner alignment endures. With each step toward authenticity, the inner space expands. The voice becomes clearer, the actions more grounded, the presence more radiant. Authenticity over performance is not just a choice, it is a practice. It must be renewed each day in small decisions and in larger ones. It requires awareness to see when one is slipping back into performance, and it requires courage to step back into truth even when it is uncomfortable. But over time, this practice builds strength. It becomes natural to live authentically, and performance becomes unnecessary. Presence is more than simply being in a place at a particular time. Presence is not limited to the body seated in a chair, the eyes open, the ears hearing. Presence is a state of being where attention, awareness, and energy all converge into this very moment. When one speaks about the energy of presence, it is not something abstract. It is a tangible force that shapes the quality of experience, influences the atmosphere of a room, and directs the way life unfolds. To live without presence is to move like a shadow, to exist without truly existing. But to live with presence is to access a reservoir of power that cannot be found anywhere else. The energy of presence begins with attention. Where attention goes, energy flows. If the mind is scattered, distracted by past regrets or future worries, the energy dissipates. It leaks away like water slipping through an open hand. But when attention is anchored in the now, something remarkable happens. The flow of energy gathers, intensifies, and becomes available to the individual in ways that are deeply transformative. This is why presence is often experienced as calm yet powerful. The calmness comes from being free of the unnecessary noise of past and future. The power arises because energy is no longer wasted in distraction. When a person embodies presence, others can feel it without words. Walk into a room with such presence and the air shifts. Conversations lower, eyes turn, and people sense a force they cannot name. This is not charisma in the usual sense. It is not performance or display. It is the authenticity of energy fully rooted in the moment. Such presence radiates stability, clarity, and focus. It brings ease to those around and often silences restlessness in others. Presence, then, is not just a private experience but an influence that extends outward. Presence requires the discipline of returning. The mind is clever, always running away. It attaches itself to scenarios, to memories, to expectations. It runs ahead into what could be or behind into what once was. The practice of presence is the continual act of returning attention to the immediate now. Breath is often used as a gateway. Feeling the air enter and leave the body, noticing the rise and fall, grounds awareness. The body itself is another anchor. Sensations in the hands, the rhythm of steps, the posture of sitting. All of these can be reminders that life is happening here, now. Each return strengthens the capacity to remain, and with each return, the energy of presence grows. The energy of presence is not a passive state. It is not about being still while nothing happens. It is active, alive, and dynamic. Presence means being fully engaged in what unfolds. Whether it is listening, speaking, walking, or working, it brings a sharper clarity to perception. Colors appear more vivid, sounds more distinct, and interactions more meaningful. Life is no longer lived in fragments, but in wholeness. Even the simplest actions, drinking water, tying shoes, writing a note, become infused with significance when done with presence. Presence also reveals the illusions that the mind constructs. Much of human suffering comes from stories created about reality rather than reality itself. Presence cuts through those stories. It does not indulge the past with endless commentary, nor does it fabricate a future filled with fear or hope. Presence deals only with what is, and in that simplicity lies freedom. When the mind stops weaving unnecessary threads, energy that was entangled in those illusions becomes free. It becomes available for creativity, healing, and authentic living. There is also a silence that arises from presence, a silence not of absence but of depth. In this silence, noise of thought subsides, and a deeper intelligence can be felt. The silence of presence is not empty, it is full. It contains insight, intuition, and wisdom that do not emerge when the mind is noisy. Many solutions to life's challenges do not come from forcing thoughts, but from resting deeply in presence, allowing clarity to emerge naturally. Presence is power because it allows alignment between mind, body, and spirit. Often, life feels fragmented because these aspects are moving in different directions. The body is here, but the mind is elsewhere and the spirit is neglected. Presence gathers them together. It makes the human being whole. In that wholeness, energy is not split. It becomes a unified current, strong and steady. This energy does not only affect the one who practices it, it radiates outward and harmonizes environments. The energy of presence also cultivates resilience. When rooted in the now, external storms cannot so easily uproot. The winds of change blow, circumstances shift, but the one anchored in presence remains steady. They may bend, they may adapt, but they do not break. Presence is a grounding force, a reminder that strength does not come from control over the future or attachment to the past, but from deep inhabiting of the moment that is actually lived. In presence, one discovers the extraordinary within the ordinary. Life ceases to be something to rush through on the way to something else. It becomes rich, textured, and meaningful here and now. A simple conversation becomes profound. A shared silence becomes nourishing. A small act of kindness becomes a moment of transformation. This is the energy of presence. It takes what seems small and reveals its fullness. Strength without softness is often confused with rigidity, and softness without strength can easily be mistaken for fragility. Yet true mastery of self, true wisdom, lies in the union of both. Life is not asking us to choose one over the other, but to learn how to embody both at the right time. When we observe nature, we see this balance everywhere. A mountain stands firm and unmoving, but even the mountain is shaped by water, by wind, by forces that are soft and yielding. Water itself flows gently, taking the shape of whatever holds it, yet over time it carves valleys, smooths stones, and wears down the strongest rock. This is the perfect reflection of strength woven with softness, softness infused with strength. Strength, in the sense that most people imagine, is about endurance, control, dominance, or the ability to resist. But if strength remains fixed and unyielding, it becomes a prison. A person who only knows strength in this way may be able to endure storms, but they will not be able to bend when bending is needed. They will break instead of adjust. Softness, on the other hand, is often dismissed as weakness. It is seen as passive, quiet, vulnerable. Yet softness has its own hidden power. It is the quality that allows things to adapt, to move with change rather than against it. Softness creates space for renewal, for creativity, for connection. The balance of strength and softness can be felt in the body. When the muscles are tense all the time, there is no fluidity, no freedom of movement. But when the body is too soft, too loose, there is no structure, no form to give shape to action. Martial practice teaches this balance directly. To strike with power, one must be relaxed, soft, and then channel strength at the precise moment of impact. To defend with skill, one must remain calm, supple, able to redirect the force of the opponent instead of meeting it head-on. This is not about being either strong or soft, but about being both at once and knowing which to bring forth in each situation. In the mind, the balance of strength and softness becomes even more vital. Strength of mind is the capacity to focus, to maintain discipline, to hold fast to what is true even when distractions pull in every direction. But if the mind is only strong in this way, it becomes closed, rigid, Unable to see new perspectives, it clings to ideas as if they were walls of a fortress, and in doing so, it cuts itself off from growth. Softness of mind allows openness, curiosity, the willingness to listen and learn. But if the mind is only soft, it becomes easily swayed without direction, without a center to anchor itself. The harmony lies in having a mind strong enough to stand in clarity, yet soft enough to adapt, to let go when needed, to receive wisdom from every corner of life. In the heart, strength often appears as courage, the ability to face fear, to endure suffering, to protect what is loved. Yet if the heart is only strong, it may become hard, armored, unwilling to feel the subtler shades of life. Softness in the heart is tenderness, compassion, the ability to feel with others, to connect deeply. But if the heart is only soft, it may be overwhelmed by every wave of emotion, unable to withstand the storms of life. A balanced heart is one that knows when to be strong enough to hold and when to be soft enough to release. When strength and softness merge, something profound is created. It is the ability to be firm without being harsh, to be gentle without being weak. It is the skill of moving through the world with both power and grace. The bamboo bends in the storm but does not break. The stone sits unmoving in the river but is slowly reshaped. Both exist in harmony with the forces around them. Consider communication as an example. If one speaks with only strength, the words may be sharp, commanding, but they may not be heard with openness. If one speaks with only softness, the words may be kind, flowing, but they may not carry weight. The true art of communication is found when words are spoken with both strength and softness, firm in truth yet gentle in delivery. In this way, words transform not only what is said but also how they are received. In relationships too, this balance is essential. Strength builds trust, reliability, the knowing that one will stand firm when needed. Softness brings warmth, compassion, the knowing that one will listen and care. Without strength, relationships lack stability. Without softness, they lack intimacy. Together, strength and softness weave a fabric that can withstand time and trials. The path to embodying both is not one of extremes but of integration. It is about recognizing the moments where strength is called for and allowing it to arise without fear of becoming harsh. It is about recognizing the moments where softness is called for and allowing it to flow without fear of being weak. This balance is not static but dynamic, shifting with life, adjusting with each encounter. Strength alone hardens, softness alone dissolves. Together, they create balance. This is not a lesson to be understood only with the mind, but to be lived with the body, felt with the heart, and practiced in daily life. It is a way of being that allows one to walk firmly on the earth while moving gracefully with the winds of change, to face storms with courage while still carrying the gentleness of water within. There exists within every human being a hidden field of influence, one that operates beneath awareness and quietly shapes actions, choices, and outcomes. This is the domain of the unconscious, a reservoir of impressions, memories, and unspoken beliefs that accumulate over time. Though unseen, it directs much of what a person perceives and how they respond to life. To understand unconscious influence is to recognize that what one does not see has as much, if not more, power than what is visible. Thoughts buried deep within the layers of the mind still radiate their energy outward, creating ripples in relationships, decisions, and destiny. The unconscious is like soil. Seeds planted within it, whether of fear, doubt, anger, or love, eventually sprout and manifest in behavior. Even when a person consciously decides to act differently, the unseen roots of these seeds continue to shape the outcome. This is why patterns repeat themselves, why cycles return, and why one feels drawn back into familiar situations even when they strive to break free. The pull is not from the external world, but from the programming that lies beneath conscious awareness. Every unhealed wound, every unexamined belief, and every hidden desire exerts its influence quietly, steering life without being questioned. In moments of silence, when distractions fade, the unconscious influence becomes more apparent. A sudden reaction, an unexpected emotion, a resistance to change, all point to what lies beneath. These impulses are not random. They are messages from the unconscious, signals of unresolved fragments seeking recognition. But instead of listening, people often suppress or ignore these signs, pushing them deeper, only to watch them reemerge later with greater strength. Suppression does not erase influence, it strengthens it. What is denied finds new ways to be expressed, often in distorted or destructive forms. Consider how often someone reacts automatically to a situation. A word is spoken, and without pause, irritation arises. A look is given and insecurity surfaces. These are not conscious decisions. They are conditioned responses stored in the unconscious and released the moment a familiar trigger appears. The reaction feels immediate, but in reality, it is the past repeating itself through the present. Unless such patterns are observed, they will continue to rule behavior. And because they are unconscious, they appear natural, inevitable, and beyond control. Influence does not stop with the self. The unconscious radiates outward, shaping how others perceive and respond. Energy is not contained, it communicates. A person who carries unresolved anger will create tension even in silence. A person who carries inner peace will create calm simply by being present. Others sense these energies even if they cannot explain them. The unconscious is constantly sending signals, not only to the mind of its owner, but also to the environment and the people within it. One does not need to speak to influence, one only needs to be. This is why inner work is essential. To change the direction of life, it is not enough to alter the surface. One must enter the depths where unconscious patterns reside and bring them into awareness. Only by seeing can transformation occur. Awareness acts like light, illuminating what was hidden. And once illuminated, the influence loses its automatic power. It is no longer a shadow dictating behavior, it becomes a choice. To cultivate awareness is to reclaim power from the unconscious and bring it into conscious hands. Practices like meditation, mindfulness, and reflection open the door to this realm. They slow down the constant movement of thought, allowing the unconscious patterns to reveal themselves. Instead of reacting immediately, one creates space to observe. Instead of being carried by influence, one begins to see its shape and texture. This observation is not judgment but understanding. The unconscious is not an enemy, it is a storehouse of experiences that seeks integration. To fight it is to deepen resistance, but to witness it is to dissolve its grip. Unconscious influence also teaches humility. It reveals that much of what one believes to be choice is, in fact, conditioned. Recognizing this creates compassion, both for oneself and for others. If a person acts harshly, it is often because their unconscious drives them from a place of pain. If one struggles with habits, it is because old impressions still hold power. Understanding this softens judgment and replaces it with patience. Transformation becomes less about forcing change and more about nurturing awareness. The unconscious does not vanish simply because one desires it to. It is woven into the human experience, shaping identity and perception. But by shining the light of awareness, the grip of unconscious influence loosens. Patterns once hidden become clear. Reactions once automatic become conscious choices. And the energy once trapped in suppression becomes available for creation, growth, and freedom. The unseen is always influencing, but whether it remains in the shadows or is brought into light depends on the willingness to see.